Hello, welcome to Let's Talk Tottenham. Unfortunately, my camera isn't working, which you may be pleased about because that means you don't have to get to see my face. I have no idea what's gone on with it. I'll try and get it sorted out for the show tomorrow. Joined by a brilliant guest who was on the last episode, which I can't remember what day that was. Ian, how you doing, Ian?
Hi, guys.
A bit disappointed
Chris,
like the rest of us, but
yeah,
presumably a bit disappointed like the rest of us. But yeah, other than that, you okay?
Apart from that, I'm okay. Yeah, shows, I guess, how things have changed for us, that we're really disappointed with a 1-1 draw at Southampton. Whereas, there would have come a time not too long ago we'd have said 1-1 draw away at Southampton, good result. So despite the disappointment, it shows we're moving in the right direction. You agree, Chris?
Yeah, I think so. It's just, I think against any 10-man team, you'd be expecting to win, and we'll come on to VAR in a bit. But yeah, everyone, thanks for watching. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. If you're watching the replay, do the same thing with that as well. So yeah, let's get into it. I think we have to say it's 2 points dropped. I don't think we can say it's a point gained, although come the end of the season, if we've got to where we wanted to by a point, then you can say maybe it's a point gain. But I just really, really hope that we don't come to regret these 2 points dropped come the end of the season. What do you think?
I think you're right. And one of my pet hates is, because I'm going to talk about the Liverpool game, is that, it all evens itself out in the end. There's no evidence of that. No one's ever done a statistical count of the decisions that go in your favour, the decisions that go against, and whether they do even themselves out. I guess if Kane had got a red card, he wouldn't have played yesterday. We might have probably gone on and lost that Liverpool game. So that would have been a point gone. But yesterday, no doubt, was 2 points dropped, had enough chances, probably didn't without playing that well, if I'm honest. But I think we need to talk about VAR because I think most Tottenham supporters think we were absolutely robbed yesterday. Chris, let me ask you, because I used to be a referee and I've got some stuff from Twitter that I've done this morning, which I'll bring everybody up to date with. But what was your take, just as a regular fan, if I can put it that way?
Davies offside, no qualms about that. He was clearly offside. Brave defending by Southampton, but it worked. Either stupidity or them playing well. Kane, it's not really the refs, is it? It's the stupid rules. It's rules made by people who have never played football in their entire life. His shoulder was offside, but he scored with his feet, which were onside, which is ridiculous. And it's the same as Bamford last year for Leeds, I think, against Crystal Palace when his hand was offside. I missed the rule change where you're allowed to punch it in the goal now. And I just think it's a stupid rule made by people who have never, ever played football in their life, don't understand it. And it's just bit ridiculous. And then the goalkeeping one, the goalkeepers are always going to get that foul every single time because it's easy and they're so protected. But in the end of the day, he jumped into Doherty and then dropped the ball himself. So I think that's the one that I'm more annoyed about, just because Doherty just jumped. And referees will always give the benefit to the goalkeeper in those situations because it's easy. It's the same as if you have a challenge in the penalty box which doesn't get given as a penalty, and then you have a challenge outside the penalty box. The referee always gives that one because it's easy, because it doesn't cost anything in the game, and it's silly. But yeah, it's just. But again, we didn't really create that much either. So
no, and I think that was the disappointment, wasn't it? We probably should have created more. I mean, I thought, for example, Højbjerg had a couple of chances to shoot, and he's not got a bad hit on him on that when he was on his right foot and kept trying to move the ball when he had that chance, when the penalty area was pretty congested. When you're given that half a yard to get a shot away, get it away. Even if
I was on Paxton Road TV with Sam and a few others after the game and said pretty much exactly the same thing. It's that they've got everyone behind the ball in the penalty box, and we're obviously trying to get it wide and put the ball in the box. Have a shot from long range, give them something else to think about. Go, okay, well, if we don't close them down, then we'll have a shot. Doesn't matter if it goes onto the corner flag. Obviously, we'll be annoyed by that. But if it goes on the corner flag and then you have another one, it's going to be okay. Well, if we don't close them down, they'll have a shot. It could take a ricochet, it could take a deflection, it could take anything. And then you're giving them something else to think about. But by constantly going wide and putting the ball in the box, it has to be something pinpoint to get any change there. And it was just too predictable.
I mean, there were. I'm going to come back onto the VAR in a minute, but I mean, again, Conte's probably got a little bit of stick for some of his changes. I know some people think, well, maybe he should have brought Ndombele on. I don't think Ndombele offers enough, to be honest. But the one thing that surprised me is why didn't he try Doherty on the right and Gill on the left? Gill is left-footed. Yeah. Predominantly left-footed anyway. Doherty's almost exclusively right-footed. I mean, you saw what happened when the ball went on his left foot. He put it into the crowd, and trying to change the angle a little bit. Doherty crossing from the right, and Gill crossing from the left. That would have given us another option, but we never seem to look to try that. But can I go back to the VAR? Because apart from any other things, I used to be a referee many moons ago, and I follow a number of referees, and some of them follow me back even on Twitter. I put a thing on. I was on Spurs Express with a picture. If you look at it, you talk about the arm, but the arm can't be offside. And I rather thought they got rid of this rule about where the shoulder is. If you look at Kane's feet relative to the defender, he's quite a long way back. Kane is his feet are quite clearly onside. And I heard Dermot Gallagher on the television this morning justifying the unjustifiable, basically. And anyway, Glenn Turner was one of the best, arguably the best linesman this country's ever produced. He ran the line in I think it was at the 2010 World Cup for Howard Webb. Anyway, there was that picture, the freeze frame picture that was on Spurs Express, and I retweeted it. And I asked Glenn and Mark Halsey and Keith Hackett, who goes back a long way, but refereed our 81 Cup final with Manchester City, amongst other pretty big games. But anyway, I said I've no time for the misogynists. This was Gray and Keys who were analysing the thing for beIN Sport in Qatar. But I said that the offside decision was making a mockery of the game as well as the one on Doherty. Glenn Turner's replied to me and to Mark Halsey and to Keith Hackett, it's not offside, it's never been offside and should never have been given as offside, Ian. Every club is example of these decisions going against them, and it's simply not good enough. But I guarantee you this, nothing will be done about it. No. To which Mark Halsey's replied, absolutely agree, Glenn. And then I've said it's the nothing that's being done about it that gets me. Who does Riley report to? The abject lack of leadership in the game is frightening. And then Keith Hackett's replied, he's managing director of the Professional Game Match Officials Limited. The board should act, but they protect a clear indication that they are happy with Riley. And therein lies the problem. We keep getting these erroneous decisions. You've got, a supposedly top referee, Anthony Taylor, fails to. Let's go back a stage. First of all, that's not an easy call for the assistant. That ball, and it's a superb ball by Harry Winks. Absolutely through to
we'll get onto him a bit later on, Harry Winks. I want to talk about him.
It's not that easy when you're running a line. You think of your position. You've got to have your left eye on the point that Winks is playing the ball, and your right eye straight ahead, looking at where Kane and the defenders are. That's not easy. That's a real skill in itself. And the assistant gets that decision, to me, spot on. And it's, you've got highly experienced officials there ruling it onside. You've then got Martin Atkinson, who thinks, I've got to get involved in this and rule something offside that isn't offside. And it just isn't good enough. And this is happening. It's not just us. It's happening to clubs everywhere. This is the biggest league in the world. And we've got such inadequate referees. We're importing players from all over the world, the best players from all over the world. I mean, I take a view, if we can't get better referees domestically, then let's import them. there is nothing magical about having to use English referees for English football, in the same way as we don't have English players just simply playing in English football. And the other thing, the Doherty decision, I think, is a nonsense. Again, I live in Scotland, and I watched quite a bit of Celtic, and I was a season ticket holder when Fraser Forster was on loan. I think he was on loan at Celtic for 2 seasons. And he has a terrible habit for a man of 6'7" of jumping and taking the ball there, rather than I can be off screen now, taking the ball there. I know you can't see my hands.
Yeah.
You're 6'7", you're jumping. That's taking you up to about 7'3", maybe 7'5", 6, and then you've got your big arms there. So you're taking yourself up to 8.5, 9.5 feet. No, if you take the ball at its highest point, there's no attacker in the world can get near you. And yet he doesn't jump. And I don't think Doherty does anything wrong at all.
No, Doherty just jumps. He jumps into Doherty, I think.
If anything.
Doherty doesn't make any attempt to jump into him. But like I say, goalkeepers will get that every single time. And I don't have a problem with the referee getting a decision wrong. I don't like it, obviously. But that's what VAR is there for. Yeah. But then the VAR was brought in, wasn't it, to get consistency in decisions, to stop it being open to interpretation. But because you've got a different person looking at the VAR, it's still open to interpretation. But the big problem I've got, certainly with the offside, is whoever the VAR bloke was, he's essentially following the rule that's been given to him, that if any part of your body is offside, it's offside. And that's not a referee problem. That's a FIFA, UEFA, FA, or whoever make that rule. And like I say, it's a rule made, and there's so many of them. It's a rule made by people who have never, ever played football in their life and don't understand it. And it has to be, it's like a business decision. It has to be, this is the line, there's no grey area, it's just black and white. And that therein lies the issue. I go back to Patrick Bamford against Palace last year, where his hand was offside. I mean, you can't score with your hand. So what the hell does it matter where his hand is? He scores with his feet or his head, they are onside, so therefore it should be onside. It's just absolutely, I wouldn't be averse if the rule was changed to, he could be offside, he might not be. What part of his body did he score with? Is that onside or is that offside? You make the decision that way. It obviously, being that they're so obsessed with these bloody lines, use it for something that actually makes a difference. Because Harry Kane scored with his feet. His feet were clearly onside. But yeah, it's not a referee decision, I don't think, it's a rule decision. The referees are using VAR to go by the rules. And I do think that, we've got to... I mean, we could have easily lost to Liverpool with Harry Kane being sent off and 3-game ban and then Jota penalty, and we got away with that. So it's every single team has this issue. It's us this weekend. It was Liverpool last weekend. Next weekend it will be someone else. And then in 2 weeks' time it will be us getting a decision against someone else. Craig Bowler's just got into. Sorry to cut you off. There's a new Hawkeye. Yeah. How are you doing, Craig? There's a new Hawkeye system being implemented in the new World Cup. It apparently gives an automatic decision within 0.5 of a second. So if the computer says no, then the computer, if the computer says no, then I'm
Little Britain now, computer says no.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting because that obviously works very, very well with tennis, doesn't it? Where if it's out or in, it shows that. And I think it's used in the goal line technology for football as well, isn't it? So that'll be interesting.
The goal line technology works really well, and that raises another couple of points that you've raised, because when you're dealing with points of fact, as in the player is offside, I'm going to come back to that, but the ball's out of play, the ball's in the goal, it's crossed the line and gone into the goal. That's fairly easy. Where you've got bigger problems is where you've got subjective decisions, and I guess you're right about the Doherty and Forster one, where you can say, well, it was a point of a subjective point that the referee Anthony Taylor has tried to determine. He's determined it's a foul. It's within his discretion to give a foul, and VAR is never going to work for that. And that, I think, is the limit of VAR. And I don't think football fans were ever properly educated that we're in a game like football, compared to tennis or compared to cricket, because they're line calls. The ball. I can't remember who it was. It was Bairstow, I think, got out the other day in the Test match, where there was 2 umpires' calls in terms of the impact in line, and whether the ball pitched impact in line and the ball hitting the stumps. 2 out of 3 were umpires' call, and you can say he was a bit unlucky with that, and maybe he was, but they were factual decisions as to where the ball pitched, where it was, where the impact was, and whether it was hitting the stumps. With tennis, as you say, whether the ball goes over the line or doesn't go over the line is again a question of fact. The offside one, though, I don't agree with you, because as I understand it, this shoulder being leant forward or what have you isn't meant to change it. That was what they were. This was what they were looking at. And when Glenn Turner says, "Look, this has never been offside." And I still am at a loss to understand why Martin Atkinson has thought he ought to get involved in that, because the feet, as you said, as I understand it, just because he was leaning forward, that doesn't actually change. That doesn't change the decision. But when it's two that go against you in the one game, and when you're down to 10 men and it's a game you feel you should have won, and when you're on a run, and when you think you're on a run, and you're challenging so closely for top 4, then those decisions I think hurt even more. But the bottom line, we're still going to get decisions like that. But I still think the referees in England are really inadequate for what we need from them. Too many bad referees. Too many bad referees staying year in, year out. I haven't seen any really good, talented young blood coming through.
Yeah, I mean, back on the offside, Craig said the rule is a part of the body you can score a goal with. They should change the rule to go onto the feet. So, I mean, that raises the question with Bamford last year with his hand that was offside, which is absolutely ridiculous. So I have no idea what the referee was looking at there. But if what Craig says is true, then by the letter of the law, Kane is offside because you can score with your shoulder, apparently. But again, it's just... Offside used to be so simple. You used to be able to, if you went to the pub like 10, 15 years ago, someone who'd never ever watched football in their life, what's offside? You go, oh, when the ball's played, if you're past the last defender, you're offside. Now, you have to write a bloody essay to tell them. It's just, different phases of play, what they're scoring with. It's just absolutely stupid. Just it's tried to be made too clever, and it's just causing all sorts of problems. And I mean, VAR is going to take a little while to implement. I mean, it came in rugby. I don't imagine it was came in and then within that season it was absolutely spot on as good as it is now. But it's just very frustrating, isn't it? But
Chris, by the way, is the t-shirt line. So with me wearing a short sleeve shirt. So if the ball comes off your shoulder, it's a goal. It's a goal. If it comes to that, and you can see below that line, then that's handball. But this is the point with Kane leading forward. I mean, and then remember, when you're running, you're not running, like this. I hope that comes across on the camera. You're running like that, so your body will move back and forth. Yeah. But I think Craig's made this point about the feet. The feet must be right. If your feet are behind the level with or behind your opponent's feet, then that should be enough to keep you onside. At the end of the day, we're trying to get more goals in the game. The whole point of this is to ensure that we get more goals, not we get less goals, or we chalk goals off for trivialities.
Yeah, the rule needs to change, but it'll never change. It's so ridiculous at the moment, and at least we'll end up getting a goal scored against us, which will be disallowed for exactly the same thing. But then we'll be moaning about how the rule is stupid anyway. And Greg said, as a referee we've got from New Zealand officiate now, maybe we should recruit more referees from abroad and raise the standard. Exactly your point there that you made 5-10 minutes ago.
Craig, I've seen that. The referee we had, I think it was the referee we had in the home game with Norwich, was the foreign referee. Maybe that's worth. I can't look it up while I'm talking, but maybe you can have a quick look at that while you're listening in. But that might be absolutely right. In fact, someone had mentioned that to me, that I thought he was Australian, but it doesn't matter. He's from that part of the world anyway. I don't care where they come from. I actually don't care where they come from. What I get increasingly annoyed about is poor referees that continue to referee week in, week out. I mean, Kevin Friend, John Moss, they've been refereeing for years. They're never going to be particularly good referees. Why are we not bringing through more and more younger referees to see if they can they can achieve a higher standard? I mean, I like Michael Oliver, but there's not many others that I think, they're good referees.
No, I mean, do you think as well it could have been? I mean, this is any non-Spurs fans listen to this is going to wind them up, but I'll say it anyway. After the Liverpool game, it's all Kane's England captain. He gets whatever he wants. Do you think there was a bit of like, okay, well, we'll even the odds a little bit. We'll call him offside, say his shoulder's offside. Or do you think that's me scraping the barrel and just stoking the fires a little bit?
They should be teaching, and then the referees, I think, called unconscious bias. I don't know if that's a concept you've ever come across, but it manifests itself in all kinds of walks of life, and I don't want to be too controversial with it. But if you hear someone speaking in a posh, educated accent, do you think they've automatically got more credibility than someone, say, with a rough Scouse, Brummie, or Glasgow accent? If someone's in a suit, they've got more credibility than someone who's in jeans and a T-shirt. There's examples of unconscious bias. And, of course, it plays its way into society with things like sex discrimination, race discrimination, and what have you. And I think to some extent Kane was the beneficiary of that bias during the Liverpool game. I think there may be some unconscious bias from the VAR. Well, first of all, from the referee at the time, and then from VAR in not asking the referee to have a look at it. England caps, wasn't that bad. Yellow's okay there. Well, it's perhaps another player would have been more harshly dealt with. Whether Martin Atkinson was evening up the book, I don't know. He certainly wouldn't admit to it, but. Was he unconsciously doing it? You'll never know. Never know.
No, I think he was just following the rules that are set out, which are just stupid. But let's move on from VAR down to something else that's not particularly enjoyable to talk about, but we have to talk about the first half performance, in particular, the first 35 minutes, absolutely dreadful, pretty much. I think Southampton surprised Conte by matching us up in terms of formation, and they looked like they wanted it more. It was only because of a silly challenge by Salisu, which he didn't really need to make, just try and let Forster sort the situation out. I'm sure Salisu's the guy who got sent off after like about 10 seconds or something, or a minute against Man United at Old Trafford in his debut. I could be wrong with that, but
I don't know.
I mean,
can't help you on that one.
Very similar to the Zaha sending off. The first yellow card, I didn't think was a yellow card, but then you're on a yellow card, so you can't do anything. And I mean, he was just a little bit unlucky, Son, with his quick feet, where Zaha was just completely stupid. But before that, we were absolutely dreadful, I thought, and Southampton took a deserved lead, and we're lucky it was only one. Is that a worry for you, that first half performance? Because under Pochettino, we used to start really slow in the first half as well, and then half time sort it out.
I think that's the point. Is more general, isn't it? That we seem to start slowly in just about every game. We don't come out of the traps absolutely buzzing. And it was a very poor start. Lovely goal by Ward-Prowse. But for all that, defensively, we look quite solid. I mean, what else did Lloris have to do other than pick that Ward-Prowse shot out the net, which would, let's be honest, no one was going to get that. It was a fabulous shot. Yeah, Adam, I'm just looking at the comments as well. We were
absolutely robbed. But
VAR was a fraud. You know,
but I think, because I was on Paxton Road yesterday, and I think it was Sam saying it might have been someone else, that we'd have lost that game if it was 11 versus 11. I disagree, because I think Conte would have changed something at half time. Conte would have changed something, and then we'd have come out a different team. But obviously that's hypothetical. We'll never ever know.
Yeah, you never know. The other thing with that, Chris, of course, is that if it had been 11 against 11, they might have attacked us more, and there'd have been more space in behind for us to attack on the break, which we just did. There was no space in behind. Just one thing I will say, though, is that Hoddle gave the man of the match to Ward Prowse, and really, apart from a couple of set pieces, I don't think he did much other than the set.
If you're going to give it to a Southampton player, it should have been Walker Peters. He made a couple of brilliant blocks. He made it very, very difficult for Kane's header right at the death, and.
You're taking the words out of my mouth.
I think Hoddle didn't really know who to give it to, so just give it to someone who scored a good goal. I think Hoddle didn't really know who to give it to. But
I thought Walker Peters was outstanding, and as I say, the block is one thing, a lot of bravery, but you just throw your head at the ball and it stops it. But that one where he I don't know where he came, suddenly found an extra 6 inches of leap. And I'm sure that because they'd have played together, know each other pretty well, Walker Peters and Kane. And Kane would have seen Walker Peters underneath him and think, I've just got a tap in here. And all of a sudden, Walker Peters has leapt up and headed the ball off his head. And it's like, wow, little man. But should never have been let go. I think that's the other point I wanted to raise with Walker Peters.
I think at the time he wasn't going to get in, was he? He wasn't going to get into our team. So he wants to play. So they probably asked to leave rather than us saying you're surplus to requirements.
Well, we got rid of him and we brought in Matt Doherty. I think I'd rather have kept Walker Peters.
I do feel sorry for Doherty in a way. We brought him in as a wing back, one of the best in the league. We play him as a full back, and now his confidence is shot to pieces. Now we're playing him on the left in bit part pieces. But I'd let him go, Doherty, in the summer. But in terms of squad, Daryl's got in touch. How you doing, Daryl? We know this squad limits. Conte needs the quality or more weeks off, but maybes. We'll talk about transfers in a bit, but I'm adamant we're getting transfers in January. But one player who was written off and 2 months ago was leaving or has to leave, who I thought was our man of the match, this guy, Winks. You can't really say any of our players were absolutely outstanding. But I was having a disagreement, a conversation with a guy on Twitter, SM, I think his initials are. I asked him to come on, but he doesn't live in the UK, so it's 4 a.m. But it's a perfect example to any idiots out there who have disagreements with people on Twitter and think you have to swear and insults and everything, because it was a fairly amicable conversation. It's just he had one opinion, I had the complete opposite. But it was good to have that discussion and be able to actually have a discussion without name calling and you're an idiot and, blah, 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 and all, which you always get, or someone blocking you. But my point was the first goal comes from his pass. And every time he got the ball, which he did it against Liverpool, they're the only 2 times I can remember in the last 2 years that he's done it. Looking forward, playing the ball forward, trying to create something. And the ball to Kane for the goal, another great ball. We've spoken about how that goal should have stood. So this guy's point was that the goal was caused by Salisu, but if the ball hadn't been played in there, someone would have got the touch, and then Salisu isn't tempted to make the challenge. But but I get his point. Other than that, Winks didn't do a huge amount, but he probably does the tiny stuff that doesn't look to me. But my question for you. Do we sell him now, or do we keep him? Because for me, he's creating good competition for the likes of Højbjerg and Skip. Højbjerg, who I think is desperate for a rest and desperately needs a rest.
I've said on a couple of streams, I would love to see Winks and Skip in the side together. I think one holding, one driving forward. would give us a little bit more impetus in midfield. I like Winks. I've always liked Winks. I think he's got a lot of ability. One of the things he doesn't do is give the ball away cheaply on many occasions. In fact, some of the times he's given it away has been when I think he's tried too hard to go forward, when actually the sensible ball is to go square or back.
Yeah, he turned himself in circles in the first half, didn't he? But that was all our mentality, I think. And Craig has just said, must admit, I was more impressed with Southampton. Even when they went down to 10, they played really well in the 4-4-1. Commitment and mentality was spot on. They really took it to us. And I like Hasenhüttl, I like Southampton. But yeah, I think that first half, the mentality was completely off from us. And I think that was evidence with Winks turning himself in circles. But second half, he was the one trying to make things happen, I thought.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's probably where we also lacked a playmaker. In the centre of the field, which may be something we're going to come on to if we're going to talk about what we need in the transfer window. But I thought, as I say, I'd like to see Winks and Skip play together. I think Højbjerg huffs and puffs a lot these days, but doesn't really give you anything. And we talked off air just before we came on air about, I think it was before we came on air anyway, about Højbjerg, 2 or 3 opportunities to shoot, and he didn't, and he tried, had to play the ball wide. Whereas I think Skip or Winks would have had a crack, and you never know what would have happened.
Winks had a couple of opportunities in those areas as well and put it out to who was out? It must have been Emerson, I guess. Until Hill came on. But yeah, I think with Højbjerg, he played pretty much every game last year. He got fairly late into the Euros. The mental strain that the Eriksen situation in that tournament must have had, and he's played pretty much every game this season as well. I think he just desperately needs a rest.
Yeah, no,
I'd be amazed if he plays the Watford game. I think it could be a Winks and Skip for the Watford game. I think Højbjerg just needs to stay at home, have a week off, and because we're going to need someone like him in the middle of the midfield, a warrior for that Chelsea game on the 5th or 4th or 5th.
Chelsea away is a different kettle of fish. But I mean, looking at Ali Gold's marks overnight, he gave Højbjerg 5, he gave Winks 8, and I wouldn't argue with that. I thought Winks played very well. He's probably our best player. Although, interestingly enough, I thought both Sanchez, who is growing by the game in confidence, and Davis both played exceptionally well. Dyer was probably the weaker or weakest of the 3.
Well, you're obviously reading the comments because Craig has said Winks like Dyer.
I'm not actually. I'm not. I must admit, I was more impressed. Winks like Dyer lost the ball in a really bad area that could cost us badly. But I was impressed by Sanchez there because Sanchez read the danger, desired to get back, and then he got his little bit of luck with the deflection flying over the bar. But I mean, what do you think that was from Dyer? Do you think I've literally had nothing to do in lack of concentration, or do you think the bounce and didn't help him, or what do you think that was? Well, I think all of our defenders have got that lack of concentration in them and that error in them, as does Romero. I mean, everybody raves about Romero, but he's still got that rashness in him as well. So none of them are Van Dijks, but then thank God none of them are Harry Maguire's either. So I thought Dyer was. I thought Dyer was, I say, the weakest of the 3 central defenders, and Sanchez did very, very well. And that's not always his strength, about reading the play quickly enough and responding to it quickly enough. But he did very well, because that had the Moura away game written all over it, didn't it? Just getting caught by a sucker punch in stoppage time. Winks lost the Winks does, Craig. But one of my things with Winks is I think he occasionally loses the ball where he tries too hard to get forward. Doesn't have to, because the fans have got on his back, about the square and the square and the sideways. The sideways and the back passes. He sometimes looks too keen to try and drive forward with it. He doesn't have to do it every time. What he needs to do is pick those passes where he's got the space into the channels, like he did for Kane in the Liverpool game, or as he did for Son and Kane yesterday, where he had a little bit of space. The players have made the run and picked that pass. So, but yeah, your point. If you say to me Winks was our best player yesterday, you won't get an argument from me. And he was excellent against Liverpool as well. So I certainly wouldn't be selling him. I would be really upset as we started, because I bet you're going to come on to Dele Alli next.
Which is reading my notes. What do you make of him? I thought he wouldn't play as well as he did at Liverpool. I thought Liverpool was tailor-made for him with the amount of space that they allowed our forwards to have. Yeah. And that's where Dele is good, when he's got space to run into. He's not good enough with his feet. Yesterday, I mean, Southampton pressing us, he's going to find that difficult. Although I would say he should have been put through by Kane, where Kane just overhit the pass. That was a fairly poor pass from Kane there. Yeah. After some really good work to get into the position to pass it, he's just overcooked it and it's gone through to Forster. But he was making the runs. He, I think, more than anybody, misses the playmaker, the Eriksen type player, because Eriksen very rarely played the ball to him, but what Eriksen did was get the ball quickly, play it to Son very quickly, who's instantly one-on-one with the defender, skins the defender, someone else has to come over. All of a sudden, there's massive chasm of space for Dele Alli, and the fact that Eriksen was a number 10, but how many times did you see him picking it up from Toby and Jan? And again, huge amount of space in the middle. So I think he's really suffered from the lack of playmaker. And I think some players, Mo Salah, I use this as an example, Chelsea didn't really get a look in. It's not his style of play. Liverpool, where it's all geared, here are strikers, fit everybody else around them, is tailor-made for him. And I think Ali is another player who needs a certain type of system to be able to do well. The Poch system was superb for him, because, and Dembele as well would skin people, drag someone else out of position, and it all created the space for Ali. Whereas Kane, you've seen, can always a number 9, Mourinho comes in, he's now number 10 as well, so he can adapt. Yeah. And Son as well can play on the left, can play on the right, can play on the top, so it can adapt as well. I'm not sure Dele can, which obviously gives you some sort of problems if you've got him in the team and a manager who doesn't play to that kind of system. Well, but yeah, if you do, he's shown that he can be one of the best in the world when he was in his heyday. But yeah, yesterday is always going to be difficult for him. But how do you think he did yesterday? And in terms of January, what do you see happening with Dele?
You've talked Dele out of the club, because I think what you're saying, because I think what you're saying is he can only play a certain way in a certain system. And I don't think it's Conte's system anyway. Yeah. But I think
if we get a playmaker in, you could see a bit more of it, because there'll be quick balls out to the wingers to take people out of the game. But I think he's had enough time now to adapt, hasn't he? And I think he's like a Pogba, seems to care more about his Fortnite games, his sponsorships, and his celebrity status than maybe football. Whereas Kane, I get the impression, if Mourinho had said to Kane in that documentary, "You're crap at training," Kane would have left the room and been out on the training pitch for the next 5 hours. He wouldn't have laughed at him. And I think that's the difference.
But I think one of the things, he started wide right yesterday, and it's not really his position. I know he had the license to come inside, but and he doesn't have great pace, Dele, so he's never going to go and skin a player. I think the other thing is, with the system we play, if you're going to play 3 at the back and then the two wide men, you've still got 3 in midfield. But I think he's going to want to play. Lucas Moura more often than he doesn't, and he's going to want to play Skip. He's going to want to play Højbjerg, or one of the two. And I think you're right. We need a playmaker. We need an Eriksen type player. We've needed them for 2 years, and we desperately need that now. And there's players that have been linked with us. Is that I can't see how Dele gets into that setup. I just don't see how. And I think if we're gonna first of all, you don't want too big a squad. You can't have players like the quality of Dele that can barely make the bench. That's no good for him. It's no good for us. My instinct, and I don't like saying it because he's been such a has been a great player. He was an England international. He was an England international on merit. That I suspect Delhi has to leave. I think if we're saying Winks stays, I think Delhi needs to go, and that's one of the areas with a playmaker there we desperately need to improve. We desperately need to improve if we're going to take that next step. And the next step for us is top 4 at the moment.
Yeah, I think the real frustration with Delhi for me is he obviously played against Liverpool really well. You have that as a marker, and yet he's kind of not really been effective against Southampton. Whereas you look at Winks, and people will disagree, which is fine, but I think he laid down a marker against Liverpool. I thought he was superb, and he's kind of followed it up in this game. He's helped set up the first goal, and by all intents and purposes, he's set up another one for Kane, which obviously got chalked off. So he's set a marker there, and now he's looking positive, looking to take risks and play balls, cutting balls. I think he played the one for Doherty, which Doherty went with his right foot and tried to get a conversion in rugby. Again, that was a good pass from Winks there. It's just fell to the wrong person, unfortunately. He could have taken a touch. But again, he's looking for those cutting balls regarding Eriksen that we talk about, Craig said, even when Conte had Eriksen at Inter, he turned him into a deep-sitting central midfielder. Just doesn't seem to play with a creative number 10 these days. I mean, Eriksen played as a number 10 and a deep-sitting central midfielder as well, just spraying the balls out when he got it from Jan and Toby back in the day. He was just... But he was the one. Eriksen's going to have to change his game if he gets back into football now, because he was the one who was running like 10 kilometres a game. He can't do that now, obviously, because of his issues. So he's going to have to be that deep central one, like Scholes was and Gerrard was at the end of their careers. So he doesn't do as much running, but I'm not sure he'll play.
I don't want to see Eriksen on a football field ever.
No.
I think when you have something like that, it's not as if he won't be able to afford to eat. These players are well insured as well as anything else. I don't want to see Eriksen on a football field. But just going back to this point about the kind of player we want. I mean, if you remember, I don't know if you're old enough to remember Glenn Hoddle, but you'd have certainly seen him on videos. Yeah. Glenn would often pick up the ball off a central defender and then just ping a 40-yard pass. Yeah. 50-yard pass. Now, when you think of the way we play, and certainly with Son and Kane and Lucas making runs into spaces, and with the fullback, the wing-backs having the freedom to get forward, that's the kind of play. I know you're not going to get, there's not many Glenn Hoddles sitting around there waiting for a club, but that's the kind of thing that I'm looking for. And of course, when you're pressing, that player would be much further forward and able to pick a pass, because no one was really able to pick a pass yesterday.
Apart from Winks, maybe.
Apart from Winks. I had this. I was watching Tottenham, the Tottenham Tantrum. I can't remember Tottenham Tantrum Gold yesterday, and I made a point. I actually think that Skip can play the Paul Scholes role. I think he's got everything in his locker to do that. Other than scoring the odd goal at the moment, he needs to score a few more goals. But I think he can do that. But I still think the kind of playmaker I want is somebody that can really ping a decent pass and get through the tight defence, because we're not good enough at that yet. And we don't have masses of pace unless we get our wing-backs into the game.
Yeah, got a few comments from Craig. Conte likes a playmaker sitting deep like he used Pirlo and Brozovic. He might actually see Winks as potentially doing that. I mean, Winks hasn't done himself any harm in these last 2 games. And Truth82, how you doing, buddy? Eriksen's had his time at Spurs, wish him well at his next club, but I think we should move on. Brozovic would be good. Yeah, I mean, when we say Eriksen, we mean an Eriksen type. Well, when I say Eriksen, I mean an Eriksen type player rather than bring Eriksen back. Because, like you, Ian, I'd be very, very nervous if he got on a football pitch again. And he's got a wife and young kids as well, so he needs to think of. Yeah. I wouldn't be averse to bringing him back to Spurs, but in a coaching role, I wouldn't be averse to that. There's a lot he could teach people like a Winks, I think, and a Skip. But playing football, the amount he used to run 10 kilometres a game, that is just
it's not going to happen.
Not an option anymore. It's a real shame, because he was a brilliant player. But we need some kind of playmaker. Winks' balls are too lofted. We need. I'm making movement with my arms, even though my camera is broken, so there's no point. It's too lofted. You don't get the drilled cross that Ericsson, Scholes, Gerrard, Pirlo used to play, which is like a missile to whoever it is. When you hit it lofted, it's in the air for an enormous amount of time in terms of football for defenders to adjust, see where the flight is, and then get rid of it. We need someone, and for competition as well. Lucas has shown that he can play some nice balls there, but again, he seems to be rotated around and all over the place. I think Lo Celso and Ndombele are done. It's a real shame about Ndombele because the amount of skill he has. But we talk about Ali's mentality. I think. I thought Ndombele had turned the corner when Jose called him out publicly after the Burnley game, and he forced his way back in, and it just seems to have been a false dawn. Lo Celso is just too injury prone. So I would be upset to see them go to make some money to buy the players that Conte wants, but whether we'll get that or not, I don't know.
I don't know what you or any of the people watching do for a living, but one of the things that stood me well in my managerial career, and that's business management, not football management, because you can't teach attitude.
Yeah.
And Ndombele is crap, and will always be. Apparently, he had that reputation in France, and it doesn't matter how much ability you've got, whatever you do in life. If you haven't got the attitude to really put it together, and let's face it, we're talking about an hour and a half, possibly twice a week, 3 hours a week. It's not a lot to ask of a professional footballer. And no, I'm sorry. It was a really bad piece of recruitment, and I think that was Hitchin that was responsible for that. Should never have been recruited. Lo Celso, unless we can get something out of Lo Celso in a number 10 role. And there's always the danger, can we move these players on? And can we move these players on at a price?
Well, I think Lo Celso would be a loan. I think there's a... Ndombele was 60 million. We're not getting anywhere near that for him if he moves on. Crazy. 30 maybe. Anything above that, I'd say, is a bonus.
Would you pay 30 million for Ndombele if you were a chairman or a coach in Spain or Germany?
Yeah. I think as well the Premier League might be a bit too, not brutal for him, but physically tough. Whereas France, I can't imagine it's too brutally tough. Italy, I think, would suit him quite well.
Yeah. But who's got the money in France and who's got the money?
I don't know. Whether they'll move on or not, I don't know. Truth 82 agrees on Ndombele and Lo Celso. Time is up for them, along with Dele and Doherty. May have to get them out on loan with option to buy. I think definitely that's a Lo Celso thing. And then Craig's also said it might be able to do a swap deal with them to help soften the blow. I think Newcastle are still interested in Dele. Whether Dele would actually want to go to a club which are possibly going to get relegated.
I don't think he's what they need. I genuinely don't think. I think they need a couple of really good central defenders. I suppose they need a playmaker, but I don't think Ndombele Dele's the playmaker, and they need at least one, if not two forwards. And I don't know where they're going to get them from at this time of the year. They've got problems because although they're quite close to Burnley, I think Burnley have got 3 or maybe 4 games in hand, and they'll win a fair number of games, Burnley.
I'm not sure with Newcastle it's a problem of where to get them from, because they've got as much money in the world as they need to get anybody. It's just who's going to want to go there to then maybe get relegated in 6 months.
Yeah,
and then be in the Championship. I think a lot of players will wait and go, right, okay, if they're still in the Premier League in Newcastle in the summer and they come for me, then I'll go. But I agree with you. I think they've got real problems, and it would be amazing to see Newcastle go down with all that money.
Yeah, and Craig says, players with the right attitude to fight for them.
Yeah, Dele's not that, is he?
But the latest I read on Newcastle was that they're only going to spend 50 million in this window, and I think they might be a bit. Well, if we get relegated, we don't want to be spending 150 million on players we might need to ship out. So I don't know what they're going to get for 50 million. And you're right. I don't know who's going to want to go there. Who's going to want to go there that might find themselves playing Championship football with no way out? Or they might want to write into their contracts, we'll pay you 100 grand a week now, but if we get relegated, you're on 40 million or 50 million, 50,000. Who's going to take that gig? Funnily enough, one of the players I saw them linked with the Rodon, and he's probably another one that I'd like to move on as well. Again, whether it's a loan, maybe even not with an option. Let's see what he can do somewhere else. But Ndombele GLC, I'm going back to the Truth 82. Ndombele GLC, Delhi, Doherty, and I'd probably add Rodon to that list.
That's a shame, that is. But I know Tommy from Tommy Talks Ball isn't a fan of Rodon at all. He thinks he just looks at the ball, I think is what he says. But that's a shame. But yeah.
I think the thing about Rodon is he was signed under
Jose.
He was signed under Mourinho, wasn't he?
Yeah,
Mourinho didn't play him. Ryan Mason didn't play him. Nuno didn't play him, and Conte's not playing him. Now there's a common link there. So if they're not going to play him, and funny enough, I'm on with Tommy later, so at least I'm planning on being on with Tommy later. So if there's talk of us that we're in for De Vries and De Ligt, or if I've pronounced them right, and De Ligt. I mean, if we were to get one of them, or a lot of people say Skriniar, let's add those three. If one of those three were to come, and we could upgrade them for Rodon, that's the kind of business I think every Spurs supporter wants to see.
I just think with De Ligt, someone's playing Football Manager who's writing for newspapers there. I mean, he's unbelievable, De Ligt. I can't see him coming to us. But with Newcastle, Craig said they could do loans for 6 months, see where they are at the end of the season. Rodon might be good for him and Newcastle.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with Craig.
I mean, he played in the Championship as well, so he probably wouldn't be too worried about. Well, he doesn't want to get relegated, but he could probably handle that. But just before we move on to Watford and then wrap up, just want to talk about Reguilon. I thought he was in a way lucky to stay on the pitch because he knew what he was doing when whoever it was ran into him. He kind of blocked him off, and I mean, you'll see that again next week in another game, and there'll be a yellow card there. And then the yellow card he actually got for the follow-through. I think he'd have probably done that even if he was on the yellow card. So it's the right decision to take him off. But we were crying out for a left-sided full-back or wide player in that second half, which obviously Reguilon would have provided, and he's not shy in going forward. So I think it forced Conte's hand in a little bit. You don't want to go down to 10 versus 10, so he had to come off, and we didn't really have anyone on there that could have done that. He could have brought Tanganga on for him and then moved Davis out to left, but he's obviously not got the engine Reguilon's got. He's not quick. He's not as quick either, but it would have been a left-sided player. So, I mean, do you think Reguilon was lucky to stay on the pitch, and do you think Conte got the substitution in that respect wrong in terms of the personnel that he brought on?
No. In fact, looking on Twitter at half-time, I think there was a lot of people saying they need to get Reguilon off before he's sent off. And there's always the danger. Again, we go back to that subconscious bias, and this is where it comes in as well, as a referee looking to even it up a little bit. So, no, I think the substitution was absolutely right. But the player that you've not mentioned, and is another one that's clearly got ability but spends far too much time on the treatment table, is Sessegnon. Because Sessegnon would have been the replacement on that left-sided wing-back role. Particularly
he's only injured for like a two-week period, but it's come at a bit of a bad time. I really like Sessegnon. Hopefully he can get over those injury things.
It's a pity because when we talk about areas that we need to strengthen, you look at what you've got as your first choices, but you look at what you've got as your cover. We'll come on to the forwards because that's something you, me, and Brian discussed the other morning. But when you look at left wing back, where you got Reguilon and you've got Sessegnon, that's an area you can say we're absolutely really well covered there, really well covered. That's not an area we need to even look at, and that's good. But Sessegnon needs to get himself fit, and I don't know whether part of the problems are in his head or he's just one of these players that just keeps picking up knocks. I don't know. It's a pity because a couple of times he's played this season, he's looked really good.
Yeah, he wasn't that injured at Fulham, from what I remember. So maybe it is in his head. But regarding Reguilon, before we move on to Watford, 332, he does have that naughty part of his game, always likely for a yellow. I mean, that's good that he has that kind of fire in him, but he's got to learn to temper that and channel it in the right way. And Craig said he thought his yellow was harsh, looked a good tackle to me. I mean, it was, he got the ball, but in this day and age, you get the ball but follow through, it's a yellow card. Again, it's another one of those rules which 10 years ago, that would have been a great tackle and everyone would have been applauding it. But yeah, last thing before we wrap up, the Watford game is, I think, New Year's Day, isn't it? So a couple of days away before this huge first leg game against Chelsea in the Carabao semi. I wouldn't be surprised if he vests Højbjerg for this game. Skip and Winks in there. Skip doing the kind of Højbjerg role as the enforcer kind of player in there, and Winks doing what he's been doing in the last two games. And for me, I'd be then putting a strong team out as possible. So Moura for Dele, and then pretty much the same was bring Reguilon back and try and take the game to them, come out like a train, try and get 2-3 goals up by half time. Then you can rest a couple of your players. But obviously, like we said earlier, Spurs don't really... They're the train at the station in the first half. They're not the train out of the traps. But that's what I'd do, because it is 4 days between the two games. So it's not like a Boxing Day and then the 28th again. But yeah, what would you pick for the Watford game, and how do you see that game going?
I'm pretty well with you on this, and of course, what we don't know is what sort of team Chelsea will play. In the, I'm just actually having a look at the who Chelsea have got on New Year's Day, because obviously, they've still got to play as well. But so. They
got Lukaku back as well, which is going to be not great because we've done with Romero in that game.
What day is it? It's the 29th, isn't it? So Chelsea play tonight. And then there are, you see, they play Liverpool.
Really?
We play on the 1st against Watford, so we play New Year's Day. They play on the 2nd against Liverpool, and they are going to play an absolutely full team against Liverpool. You pay your bottom dollar, so they may rest a few for the game against us. I would be inclined for us to be playing our strongest side in both those games. We've got 4 days.
Would you start Højbjerg or give him a rest?
No,
he's obviously in our strongest team.
I've been saying for the last 3 or 4 games, 2 or 3 games, I'd like to see Skip and Winks play alongside each other. I'd like to see what they do together, with one holding, one pushing. Alternately, whoever gets the ball drives, the other one can cover. I would really like to see us doing that. Beyond that, I think I would at least be starting with a strong side. I certainly want to see Lucas back. I don't know, Bergwijn would be fit again. Would you give Sonny a little rest, because Sonny's looked a little bit out of sorts, and he was certainly.
I think if you're any opposition team and you see Son isn't on the pitch or Son comes off, you're delighted. Regardless of how bad he's played or how out of sorts he looks, he's still a threat. I mean, he didn't really do anything yesterday, but yet he got the penalty that got us a point.
No, absolutely.
So yeah, I'd maybe look to take him off after an hour or so. Hit him and Kane after an hour if you can get yourself into a healthy lead, which again is not guaranteed with Tottenham these days.
And that means Conte getting them to come out the blocks quickly and getting those goals when we need them. Yeah,
and we do that at home, don't we?
We do it better at home because Conte hasn't had that many away games.
No, that was only his second yesterday, I think. Certainly in the league.
Everton and yesterday. Well, he's had 3 postponed, so it's not his fault. But he's drawn them both Had a man sent off in both, but not been able to win either of them. So
yeah, I mean, I can't remember the last time that we had 3 games in a row where we finished the game a man up. I can't remember that.
No, I can't either. I can't either. It's not as if any of the red cards were wrong either.
No, I think the issue yesterday was just the pace and the changing it up, that no shots from range, there was no pace. If Eriksen was playing in that game, he'd have been getting the ball, he'd been dictating the pace, he'd have been pinging it out to Royale, Doherty, Son, Moura came on, didn't he? And it would have been stretching the team. When you're a man up, you've got to stretch a team. You've got to make them run. You've got to drag them side to side. You've got to drag them all over the place. Southampton were very, very disciplined and very good tactically, but we made it a little bit easier for them because we were so slow. And what you find as well is if you have an Eriksen player in like that, players make runs because they know there's someone there that if they make a 50-yard run, someone can pick them out. Under Nuno, where we didn't have that at all, it was no surprise to me that nobody was running because it's just wasting energy. Because
Well, I don't understand Craig's comment, so I've obviously missed something after
McDonald's gate. Team selection might depend on what Conte finds in the players' bins. I'm assuming he's been eating junk food rather than what Conte. He banned ketchup, didn't he, Conte, or something like that? But I mean, if that's true that Ndombele's been eating stuff that Conte doesn't want him to eat, that just goes back to the discipline and the mentality and attitude.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we have to beat Watford. It was good that we're still unbeaten under Conte, but really should have beaten Liverpool, should have beaten Southampton, and it's 4 points dropped there. So I really hope that we don't live to regret that. But obviously the Liverpool game, I think most Spurs fans before the game were thinking the worst. So it's a point gained there. It's just in the way that the game panned out, it was 2 points dropped because we had about 6 glorious chances.
There's our friend Mr. K.
Mr. K. How you doing, buddy?
Good morning.
But yeah, I really hope we don't come to regret that. And we've got to get back into winning ways and starting with Watford and then the Carabao semi-final. A draw at Chelsea wouldn't be the worst result. Take something back to White Hart Lane. And if we get anything that sort of like is a good result, the stadium will be rocking in the second leg because the fans will believe that we've got enough to get to a final. If we get done 4-0 at Chelsea, it could be a very somber thing, but I don't think that will happen. I think we'll score.
I don't think that will happen, and I don't think because if they've got the game on the second against Liverpool, they are going to have to play their very, very strongest side in that game. So, and they've got 24 hours less recovery time than we've got. And you can't see them getting 4 or 5 up in a game like that and going on and resting players. It's a game they'll probably have to go right to the death on. So we might be able to go and get something there. We might be able to go and get something there because they might be playing half a reserve side. I think the mentality is an issue there. Maybe not an issue, but we don't win at Stamford Bridge, do we? So yeah, I mean, Craig said on Weird Tottenham TV, someone said their friend was working around on Ndombele's house and his bin was full of McDonald's, which it's a rumour, but there you go. It wouldn't surprise you about Ndombele, unfortunately.
No, and the Truth 82 regarding the Liverpool game. Having lost 7 or 8 in a row to Liverpool, was happy with the draw. Dropping points to Southampton is annoying. We can't afford to do that against Watford. Especially that we're in this position now that if we do win our games in hand, we're in 4th and not far off the 3rd and 2nd now after Leicester beat Liverpool yesterday. But yeah, we can't afford any slip-ups like that Southampton game. And you can blame the VAR as much as you want, which obviously did hinder it. We'd have won without the VAR dodgy decisions. But we probably didn't do enough to say, well, we destroyed Southampton in that second half, which is a disappointing thing with having 10 men for 50 minutes, almost an hour. And Conte won't be happy about that. So I hope he gets into the players and they're fired up for this Watford game. We come out and see a real guns blazing performance and take it to Watford because they're conceding goals as well. So if you attack them and concede and get them to concede a goal early, you don't know what their mentality is. Their head might drop and everything like that. And regarding Ndombele, there's photographic evidence apparently. But yeah, I mean his attitude, his attitude, like we say, not gonna, make Conte smile.
I think we're all pretty well agreed on here. The players we want to see, or we think are dispensable. Bringing in higher quality replacements.
I think it's the players that we've been saying for the last 4 months, but for me now, Winks has done enough to. I mean, we always say give him another chance, but he's actually done stuff in the last 2 games for me that say he's deserving of that chance now. Rather than, I think it was, he's Spurs through and through, so you give him a bit more dispensation that way. But now he's actually done stuff and of course, positive stuff for us in games. I think that's what he wasn't doing before. So I would keep Winks, and then the Delis.
Yeah,
the Delis, the Dohertys, unfortunately. Although I feel sorry for Doherty, and certainly Ndombele, Lo Celso, and time is up for them. But it remains to be seen what happens in January. But next up is Watford. Ian, thanks so much for coming on again. Becoming a regular now. And it's been superb having you on and chatting to you. Unfortunately, it's not been in our happiest circumstances, but we didn't lose. We're still undefeated under Conte in the league, and just put it right against Watford. Good performance. Then Southampton and Liverpool have forgotten. I
might go on Tommy Takes Ball tonight. He's asked me, so I might. I don't think I've been on that one before, so I might give that a go later tonight. Yeah, Tommy's great. It's a great channel that is. So you should definitely check that out later on with Ian and Tommy on there. You don't have a channel of your own, but you are on Twitter. It's in the description. So where can people find you? Yeah, I've picked up loads of followers since I started doing these streams, which is good. And I always follow back as well. So, cheers, thanks, Craig. Thanks for that. I hope you enjoyed it. So,
where can people find you on Twitter if they don't already?
Yeah, Shaggy1712. It's that simple. That's my Twitter handle.
Excellent. Yeah. So, And
all right.
I'm back tomorrow. Hopefully my camera works. I'm really looking forward to this. Mike Donovan has written a book. And I can't remember the name. That's embarrassing. It's a book about Dave Mackay. Football's. I can't remember the name of it. Let me find out. Oh, that's embarrassing. He might not come on now. Football's Brave Heart, Dave Mackay. Football's Brave Heart, which you can get on Amazon and Pitch Publishing as well. So he's coming on to talk about that tomorrow. Really looking forward to that. I really hope I can get my camera working there. Cheers, Truth82. Thanks you, Craig, Mr. K, Adam for joining in the comments. Really appreciate it. So Mike Donovan coming on tomorrow to talk about Football's Brave Heart, Dave Mackay. Hopefully my camera's working. So check that out, and then we'll be back some point in the new year, I guess, the Watford review, and then we'll be back to normal proceedings with the previews and the reviews. Make sure you check to hit the like, hit the subscribe. If you're watching the replay as well, do the same. Make sure you check Ian's, follow Ian on Twitter. As always, come on, you Spurs.
Thank you so much for watching, for everybody who participated in the live chat and added comments. Before you go, please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Anybody who couldn't watch the live video, you can still catch us on YouTube. Add any comments, suggestions or questions to the comments section on the video. Anybody who's listened to the audio-only podcast, thank you so much for listening. Anybody who wants the audio-only podcast, you get this wherever you get your podcast from. Alternatively, if you go to Twitter, @Talk Tottenham, you'll find the information there. We'll be back soon. We're live Mondays, 8 p.m, Fridays, 12:30 UK time. Until then, come on, you Spurs!